I'm Ryan DeConing. This is my research study on performance-enhancing drugs. So for a little bit of background, to begin with, PEDs are becoming a huge escalating problem in America. And in high school, sports are getting extremely competitive, and anyone who wants to have a legitimate shot at playing in college or at whatever the next level is, it's only getting harder and harder. And to achieve that, people want to take the extra step to outperform their opponents and outperform their teammates. So what people are doing is they're considering performance-enhancing drugs. But despite all the positives that they see from this, such as gaining an advantage on the field, there are extreme consequences, physical consequences, mental consequences, and psychological consequences. So, there are real life examples of this that are very prominent, such as Alex Rodriguez and Lance Armstrong. So Alex Rodriguez was suspended for the whole 2014 season, and then Lance Armstrong got a bunch of his awards taken away after winning around, I think it was 8 Tour de France's or something like that. He got all of them taken away because he was caught using PEDs. So if huge athletes like this, like as popular as these two, are falling into this mistake, how can we stop young athletes, young students from doing the same thing? So yeah, basically high school athletes need to be aware of the consequences like that. So the objectives of this study, I kind of split it into 4 different objectives. Firstly, to understand the effects of performance-enhancing drugs of high schoolers, and this is not necessarily just high schoolers, but just in general, which will be done through conducting research and looking into different articles. Number 2, conduct a survey to understand how the knowledge of high schoolers lines up with facts. Third, to come to a conclusion on how aware high schoolers are to the consequences of performance-enhancing drugs. And finally, to expose the topic from an educated and objective perspective. So I employed a mixed method design as it allowed for an in-depth analysis of performance-enhancing drugs and high school athletes' understanding. So the method allowed me to take a mix of qualitative and quantitative data, such as the test to see if the students are knowledgeable of PEDs and the personal opinions they have of those PEDs. And this all led me to my research question of to what extent are high school athletes aware of the consequences of performance-enhancing drugs? So this experiment was kind of split into 2 things, and firstly, to research and understand the effects of PEDs through literature review and collecting information from other sources. And then secondly, to test Brophy College prep students through a survey. So the survey would use all sorts of questions and test their knowledge and understanding of the usage of PEDs. And there would be a mixed type of questions to promote open participation and test personal opinion. For example, a test seeing if they really knew their effects, and then different questions that asked different things about their personal opinions of it. And then the data was analyzed through Excel to identify trends and patterns. So 3 main literature review articles really helped me propel my studies the most. So the first one, Counseling Athletes Who Use Performance-Enhancing Drugs, a new conceptual framework linked to clinical practice. This one by Michael B. Johnson contains surveys and it focused on the psychology behind each individual PED user from the perspective of a psychologist. And it emphasized that each athlete has their own subjective perceptions and subsequent behaviors. And so it basically concluded that what we're doing to teach and educate about PEDs has not been working, and it overwhelmed what we can do as a community to lower the number of PED users. And it basically just emphasized the importance of each individual athlete's perception and behaviors and how everyone is different and everyone should have different strategies on how to lower that number. So the next one, Australian athletes' knowledge of the WADA prohibited substances list and performance-enhancing substances. This one by Rhonda Orr. It included questionnaires and it investigated the knowledge of the WADA prohibited substance list and performance-enhancing substances among about 2,000 sub-elite athletes, mostly around 20 years old. So what it concluded, the results showed that they had a very limited understanding of the substances, showing that they didn't score more than 1/3 of the questions correctly. So in the test, they scored decently high on the positive effects of the PEDs, like they knew that it would help them, how it would help them, but they scored very poorly on the adverse effects. So they were aware of the positives, they were not really aware of the negatives. And those who tended to do better in the questionnaires tended to be white, 19 to 22 years old, and male. So this study kind of highlights the lack of knowledge among athletes regarding the adverse effects of PEDs and suggests a need for improved education on the topic. And it also runs decently parallel with mine. The last article, No Pain, No Gains by Rachel Rowe and Israel Berger. So this study took around 600 men who actively inject PEDs and tested the effects to what the participants can withstand and what can be done to ease those effects. So it kind of showed and concluded what the most common effects were, which were increased anger and genital problems. And then it concluded that a way that can kind of ease those problems if they take cycle breaks when injecting, which helps lower the effects. And this study provides insight into the specific side effects of PED use and how to manage them. Okay, so I got a few key results from the surveys. The first one, nobody got all the results correct. I think that's a huge one. So these are all the potential answers. The green ones are correct ones, the gray ones are incorrect ones. So as you can see, it's pretty scattered. I mean, there is a slight, more people did choose the green ones, but still, some gray ones surpassed some green ones, and it was overall pretty balanced, so no one really knows. So that's the problem, but what's a bigger problem is that the participants believed they were knowledgeable. Here, when I asked, I'm very knowledgeable about the effects and usage of PEDs, here were 38% said agree, and then another 30% said strongly agree. So that's more than half the people who believe that they are knowledgeable about the effect, but yet not a single one of them got all of them right, which is clearly a problem. Second huge thing that resulted from the survey that you can view as a very positive thing is that most people agreed on the overall negativity of PEDs. For example, I asked the question, if you want to be a pro athlete, it's necessary to take PEDs. And 48% of people disagreed, and then 39% of people strongly disagreed. So obviously people are agreeing that you don't need to take them, it's not necessary. And then when I asked the question, taking PEDs is worth the risk, same trend here. We got 41% disagreeing and 28% strongly disagreeing. So it's clear that the majority thinks that they're negative, but what about that 30%? What about that 10%? There are around 10 people in this room, so while most of them are gonna say, yeah, we shouldn't do it, there's still gonna be that 1 or 2 people. And then who knows what they're gonna do with that information, thinking that they do need to take PEDs in order to reach the next level of their sport, or that it is worth the risk. So what this shows us is that we need to better educate our young student athletes, as we want to turn that 10% into 0%. These trends will only just continue if we don't do anything. So this would require both teaching from schools and from sports organizations, as both have failed to properly teach about PEDs. We need a collaboration between medical professionals and experts to help create openly accessible resources for both the student athletes and coaches or teachers or parents that are trying to help their student. Because it's not all just on the student, it's all the people that are trying to inform these students. And a future possible research that can be done to further progress what has been concluded is a research article focusing on finding the most effective way of educating young athletes. That was super.